Record. There we are. So if you're joining us, this is a webinar. You are not being recorded because you are not visible. This is just recording Helen and myself. And that's so that people who aren't able to come along tonight can view the recording if they need to. Now, our number of attendees, Helen, has stabilised. So are you happy to make a start? Yeah, so hi, thanks for coming along this evening. Sorry, it's the end of a day with many meetings for me, so I've been talking a lot. My words no longer want to come out. But welcome along this evening. This is the education subject focus session, so we're going to be talking a bit about undergraduate education, and particularly undergraduate education at Homerton. I'm Jo Hayward. I'm one of the admissions tutors at Homerton, so one of the people who kind of oversee applications and interviews and admissions. And then, do you want to introduce yourself, Helen?
Yeah, thank you, Jo, and thanks so much for hosting us today. My name is Helen Demitriou. I'm an associate professor at the Faculty of Education, and I'm also fellow and tutor and director of studies at Homerton College. So look forward to telling you a bit about the undergraduate degree today, but I'll pass back over to Jo. Thanks.
Brilliant. So as we go through this session, we are going to use the Q&A. If you have any questions that you want to ask, you find that by clicking on the little, for me at least, the little circle with 3 dots in that says more underneath it. And in there, I've got a button that's called Q&A. And if you open that, that will allow you to put in any questions that you would like us to discuss. It's really odd for us actually doing a presentation and not being able to see you or interact with you in any way. We would really value some questions because otherwise it sort of feels like Helen and I are talking to each other, and we know quite a lot about education, so we're good. So please do let us have any questions that you've got. They can go in there anytime throughout the presentations, but we'll also have a bit of time at the end to talk about those things. So I think I'm going to make a start, Helen, if that's okay, and share my screen. So I want this one, I think. So, oh, can you see that, Helen? Is that okay? Oh, I've made you disappear behind the Q&A. Brilliant. There we are. So I'm going to be talking to you a bit about applying to Cambridge and applying to Homerton. So to begin with, I'm just going to talk about, well, why Cambridge? Cambridge is a wonderful place to live and to learn. And if we look at kind of rankings, university rankings, things like that globally, Cambridge scores very highly in terms of the education that's provided. It really is a world-class education. And that education is made up of lots of different parts. So we have some lectures, we have kind of seminars, we have supervisions. And those supervisions in particular set the course apart from many other courses, because that's where you might, if you're studying education, there might be 1, 2, 3, 4 of you, depending on what it is you're studying, sitting with Helen, an expert in her field, talking about issues that have come up in the learning that you've been doing, really interrogating those issues and allowing you to ask your questions, allowing you to move your learning forwards through that. And it's a great opportunity. It's certainly one of the things that I love most about working here. I don't teach on the education course, I teach on the chemistry course, but the chance to sit and talk with people who care about the things I care about and to kind of just discuss and see their ways of thinking about things and challenge each other and kind of build ideas together is a really lovely experience to have. And I think a lot of people who come through our system find those supervisions particularly a really valuable part of the experience. Now, it's also a really supportive environment. We do demand a lot from our students. The courses are quite demanding. We're asking you to have quite a high amount of contact time, but also do a lot of independent work. And sometimes people need some support to mean that they can really flourish in that environment. And that support is available through college or through the university. There's lots of different mechanisms of accessing that. And Helen mentioned earlier that she's a tutor with one of her hats on and a director of studies with another hat on. those are both people within college who are there to support you. So if you come to us as an undergraduate, you would be assigned a director of studies who would be an education person, and you'd have a tutor who would be a not education person. So you kind of have different people who can look after you from an academic point of view and from a pastoral point of view. The other thing I think it's always worth mentioning, because people think of Cambridge and I've just said, well, we do ask you to work quite hard, and we do, but we also really want you to make the most of the opportunities that you have. So we want you to get engaged and involved in other things beyond your work. That could be drama, that could be music, that could be sport, it could be volunteering, it could be a whole host of things. And I did have some people the other day, we've just had the open days, who were trying to come up with a club or society that Cambridge doesn't have, and it is not an easy job to do. Some of those are at college level, so the college has rowing, it has football, various other sports, lots of music. We have a coffee society. There was a bread society, I don't know if that's still running. But there are also then activities, clubs, societies that you can join at university level. And sometimes that's because you want to play sport at a really high level. Sometimes it's because you want to make those connections across colleges. Or actually, there's not that many people within your college who are interested in the same thing, but across the university there are. So there's a whole range of opportunities there. And something that we believe really strongly in is that you will be able to do better in your academic work if you are happy, if you're healthy, if you are doing other things that you love, that bring structure to your week, that give you teamwork, that give you extra. All of these things are really positive, and they come together to build that really positive academic experience as well. And then it is worth noting, because I know it can be a worrying thing, thinking about, well, what does the future hold? But generally, Cambridge has very good levels of employability at the end of the course. And I think that can be quite reassuring. Oh, skipped one. Sorry. Now, the other thing that can be quite confusing when we have a collegiate university is, what actually do the colleges do? So there are if you come as an undergraduate student, the university and the colleges have quite different roles. The university determines the course content. It does the lectures, seminars, things like that, and it does the exams. And what that means is, whichever college you're at, you will study the same content with there's optional modules and things. You can choose different options, but everyone has the offer of the same options. And you will sit the same examinations at the end. What that means is, from that point of view, the college that you're at doesn't matter. But there are things where the college does play a role. So colleges admit the students. So when you apply to Cambridge, you can either apply directly to a college, or you can make what's called an open application. And if you do that, your application is then assigned to a college and treated in just the same way as if you had applied to that college to start with. But if you have the opportunity, we've got open days coming up in September, to come and visit and just spend some time in these environments and try and sort of work out, well, actually, where do I feel I fit in? That can be a really useful thing to do in terms of choosing your college. I believe that proximity to the Faculty of Education is also quite a good motivation for many of our students, Helen, because the Faculty of Education is approximately, I'm going to go for 12 meters that way from where I'm sitting right now. It really isn't far, which probably means that our students are generally the latest to lectures, by the logic of those who live closest are always the last ones there. The colleges are also your home when you're at Cambridge. So you live in college, and I'll show you some pictures of the accommodation in a bit. We have catering within the college, so you can get breakfast, lunch and dinner in hall if you want. There are also sort of little mini kitchens that you can use in your accommodation, and recreation, so that kind of relaxing, socializing often happens in college. We also organise a lot of the small group teaching. That changes a bit by the kind of year group that you're in. Sometimes the higher years, that comes more through the department, but you'll often have small group teaching from the academics who are associated with the college. And we've got some really great facilities for academic study. So if you study education at Homerton, you have, well, one library 12 meters that way and another one about 15 meters that way, both of which are accessible for you during the course of your degree. and both really lovely environments to work in. In terms of colleges, we are here to talk about Homerton, so this is us. It looks slightly greyer than this today, but this was what college looked like most of last week. You've got a picture here with the round window of our great hall. That used to be the dining hall, but now that's used for a lot of kind of cultural events. So we have music, we have talks, we have badminton, all sorts of things in there. The Wellbeing Fair was in there earlier in the year. And so it's a great space to use for whatever the college needs to provide for the students at that point. We had a Winnie the Pooh festival over the weekend, marking 100 years of Winnie the Pooh, which used that space as well. We've got beautiful grounds that are shown here. We've got lots of lovely buildings. This picture over to the right-hand side is our new dining hall. And I think these two halls, the old and the new dining hall, kind of epitomise this. We combine the old and the new. That is in the building sense. Our new dining hall has ground source heat pumps. It's really looking forward in terms of sustainability. But we also combine the old and the new in ensuring that we have all of the traditions of Cambridge. We've had graduation recently, and all of our students went up in their hoods and held someone's finger and got recited at in Latin. It's a beautiful, if slightly confusing if you're a 5-year-old. I took my 5-year-old along. She didn't know what was going on. It was lovely. She knew it was important. That was what she took away from it. But we have all of those traditions, but we're also really forward looking in terms of thinking about, well, how can we best support our students? What pedagogy, what ways of teaching and learning do we really want to embrace? How can we respond to the world that our students are going to leave university into? And so we are very forward looking in that sense as well. We're also a large college. We take students in every subject. We have a large education cohort. I think, Helen, I'm correct in saying it's the largest of all the colleges, aren't I?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
So you have a kind of a really good little group of education students, but you also have people from maths and people from veterinary science and people from design and architecture and Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic who you will get to know. And we are really keen to build community within your subject, but also across those subjects. So generally when you come in first year, all the first years live together in the same accommodation block, and you will generally be kind of grouped around a little kitchen shared space with some people from your subject and some people not from your subject, because we want to make sure you've got the opportunity to make those connections. And those connections are kind of social connections, but they're also really valuable from an academic point of view. If you've got people who care deeply about their subject and you can engage in conversations with them and think, well, how does that impact my thinking about education or about this issue that has come up recently? That can be really beneficial as well. The other thing, and I'm going to take these last 2 points together here, is that we really are committed to demanding, I think is the correct term, that our students make a positive impact on the world. Getting a degree is a great thing. Getting a degree and using it in a way that has a positive impact on the world is a really great thing. And so we support that in a whole range of ways, but one of them is the Changemakers programme, which is a co-curricular. That means it runs alongside your degree programme that all of our undergraduates can take part in. And that allows you to think about developing leadership skills or entrepreneurship or attending talks from politicians or all of these things that might not feel like they're directly relevant to what you're studying, but are so important in terms of developing the skills and the connections and the ways of thinking that you'll go on and use in the world. This is a picture of our principal here, Simon. Simon is really, really engaged in college, which I think is so lovely. So he will often be found playing table tennis or at lunch or around the college. He has you can go and see him in his office and take ideas to him, and he's really great at kind of saying, well, how can we make these things happen? He also really drives that, well, I want you to get a good degree, but I want you to really make use of that. how are you going to go off and make a real difference in the world? And that leadership comes right from the top of college, which is also a great thing. A few points here about Homerton. So we are officially the newest college in Cambridge. We got kind of our stamp of collegeness most recently, although we have actually existed for a really long time, with great links to education in that history. We are close to the train station. We are slightly further from the centre of town than some of the colleges. I was speaking to a lot of the students over the last week about this and kind of, well, what does that mean to you? And they were like, well, it's great because I get a walk at either end of the day, or I really like the site. It's 12-minute cycle ride, or if you don't cycle, there's a bus that goes from right outside to where you need to be. So actually, that ability to come away from that really busy time where you're studying, to come back to Homerton where there is space and greenery and it's where you live, is really, really valued by the students. We've got great facilities and we've got some of the cheapest student accommodation in Cambridge, and we've got a lot of ensuite rooms, which tends to be very popular with the students as well. Now, alongside that, I just want to mention that there are various forms of financial support that are available. I know that that can be a concern for people. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this now, but if this is something that is relevant to you, you're welcome to contact the admissions office and they can give you more information. I think internship grants is the one that feels most relevant to me at the moment, because I've got a number of students currently doing internships because they were awarded internship grants, which has been very helpful for them. So I will just finish off. I'm sure you know all of these things, but in terms of applying, if you decide to apply to us, first thing to do, choose your course, listen to Helen and she'll help you decide that it's the right course for you. Then it's thinking about choosing a college or whether you want to do an open application. The UCAS deadline is coming up. That's around the 15th of October. Your schools will almost invariably give you a deadline that is sooner than that. Please stick to that deadline. They know what they're doing, and they will have things that they need to do once you've submitted. So listen to them. Once you've done that, there are some additional forms that you have to fill out. We ask for things like what you've studied within each subject, because that helps us think about your interviews. We'll then ask you to submit some written work for education, and that is generally work that has been written for one of your subjects and submitted and marked in school or in college. And then if we are able to interview, those interviews take place normally at the start of December. We do interview as many people as we can. There is a sort of time limit. We can't interview everyone that applies, but we really try and interview as many as we can, because we think it's really important to meet you and kind of learn about your motivations and your thoughts. And we value those conversations. And then there is, I'm afraid, quite a long wait after the interviews until you hear, which is towards the end of January, what the decisions are. But that's just to make sure that everything happens at the same time for everybody and it's all communicated correctly at the end of that. So that's the end, Helen, of what I wanted to say. I'm going to, I've made my screen go completely black somehow. I have stopped sharing though, haven't I?
You have stopped sharing, Jo. Great. So I can just see you and me, and yeah, and I know that there are people here listening. So, but thank you very much for your information. That's so rich. And what I was really hearing is, at the beginning of that, is just be really curious. You know, we just want you to be curious about this subject and what it can do for you. So shall I start sharing now?
Yeah, you go for it.
Okay, brilliant. I'll see if I can. So I am doing this, and then I just need to, my full screen.
Just right down the bottom.
Yep. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Bear with me, everyone. Okay. Can you see this all right, Jo, as well?
Yeah, perfect. Fantastic. Thank you.
Brilliant. So I'll carry on, and I'll try and be swift because I'm sure you're all, it's getting late in the day. Let me just tell you a little bit about education and what it looks like at Cambridge, and in particular with that Homerton dimension, of course. So as I said, I've been in the educational faculty now for many years, and I teach there. My background is in psychology, but it's that psychology and how it feeds in and informs education. But I'll talk to you about that education degree and what other disciplines we cover, because it's not just that psychology, which I happen to research and teach. So moving on, what I'm going to cover briefly today. And as Joe said, do ask questions in the chat. If there's anything that occurs to you, questions or comments along the way, we're really happy to receive those.
I've got the Q&A open, ready to answer.
Fantastic, ready to go. Thank you, Joe. So, so what we're going to be covering is so why education, education at Cambridge, education at Homerton in particular, and applying to Homerton. Some of the things that Joe's already covered, but let's look at some of those things, and hopefully it'll give you at least a flavour. So why education? Top right on this screen, I hope you can see, you should be able to, is the education faculty itself. A fairly new building called the Donald McIntyre Building, somebody I worked with back in the day and inspired a lot of the research that started there. And that is where you'll be. That's where you'll be studying education. As Joe said, Homerton is just to the, as you look at that building, just to the left of it, the college itself. So it's a hop, skip and a jump away. And it's great in terms of, it's a great choice, Homerton, in terms of the education degree, because it's so close and there's that convenience, but those roots in education that started at Homerton College itself. So why education and why at Cambridge? Well, the BA in education at Cambridge has consistently been #1 in the UK for a good few years now. And that's something we do like to shout about. It's a great degree and students come surprised. Even at interview, some say to me they just didn't even realise there was such a degree as education, that it even existed, because it's not typically something you'll do at school, but obviously in that sense. So it appears at university, and when it does, I hope to convince you that it's something that appears in a really good way. So as you can see here, this is something that's featured on our website. Do have a look at our website, which gives you more information. But the BA in education is a rich, varied and fascinating study of humanity. It intersects with a wide range of subjects such as psychology, drama, history, philosophy, sociology, economics, politics, English and more. Students on our course consider a multitude of pertinent questions around social justice, inequality, technology, the role of institutions, and how all of these impact on the human experience of learning. So covers a lot, very interdisciplinary, and I think this is where the richness of the degree really sort of rears its head in a great way. I just want to tell you these couple of wonderful quotes from a recent graduate. She was really pleasantly surprised. She actually converted from the veterinary course within Cambridge to us, and really converted in a big way, because she ended up going to do the primary education PGCE degree qualification. She said, the education course is so broad, I covered an amazing range of different things: sociology, the study of children's play and imagination, children's literature, and a dissertation on dyslexia. She was bowled over by this degree. She said, something you never realize until you study education at university is how much it's grounded in research. At school, I just assumed teachers knew this stuff and passed it on, which they do, but she said it blew my mind, that teaching, the whole idea of education is in itself something you can study, and that we can research all these things about how to make children's lives better. So this is what it does, and I think it really does do what it says on the tin. So going on a little bit to tell you a little bit about where can the BA in education actually take you? What can you do with this very rich interdisciplinary degree? Well, some of our students go on to higher education. Our course provides excellent preparation for a wide range of master's degrees and doctoral research programs at Cambridge and elsewhere. Also, there's the option of initial teacher training. Those who intend to teach often sometimes use the degree as a launch pad to provide a foundation from which to proceed into initial teacher training in primary education. Some of our students also go on, by the way, to do a PGCE, that postgraduate certificate in education at secondary level, and use maybe their A levels, that if, for example, in maths, but we don't offer that in Cambridge. It's other places in the UK where you can do that secondary PGCE directly from our education course. But you most certainly can apply to do the primary PGCE, though, directly from our course. Careers options for graduates. So we've had graduates going into so many spheres of career options. They're very varied, and they find employment in a wide range of occupations in the UK and abroad, as well as further study and teaching that I've just mentioned. Our students have gone into research, educational research and neuroscience publishing, the civil service. Others now work in government policy and administration, the media, theatre, heritage and museum, education, HR, business and consultancy, charities, NGOs, and international development. As you can see, and here there's a lot of variety. I was even at the DFE, the Department for Education Officers, a few weeks ago, and one of our recent graduates was there with a fantastic job, having graduated from us. So lots of places you can take this degree to. But what does our course look like, the structure? Well, it's a 3-year course. The undergraduate degree at Cambridge is called the so-called TRIPOS. That's the name of the undergraduate degree. And the BA in Education is that 3-year course, flexible, interdisciplinary. I'll tell you a little bit about the papers that are on offer. Some are compulsory, but many are optional papers. And what is wonderful about this degree is that you start in first year, as you can see here on this slide. It's so-called Part 1 is what first year is called. And in that year, there are 4 compulsory papers, and that's it. So all students take these 4 compulsory papers. As you can see, Introduction to Education Systems and Disciplines, Learning and Human Development, which is my paper, Education, Creativity and Culture, and Education and Social Justice. They are our 4 compulsory papers. They're assessed in different ways, some by examination, some by coursework, some by a combination of those things, but all students cover those. And what is really interesting to know is that students sometimes know what they want to do from the start. Even those who know what they want to do often change their mind based on that first year exposure of different papers, and actually surprise themselves going forward with the types of choices they make going down the line. So it's that being curious right from the start, and also just having an open mind about what you might do. So in year 2, as you can see, in year 2, we call Part 2A. We offer 4 papers, 2 of which are compulsory and designed to provide you with the foundations of education research in preparation for that very important dissertation, which is compulsory in year 3. But the 2 compulsory papers that we offer are called Designing Education Research and the Literature Review paper, both of which, as I said, prepare you, I feel, very, very well for going forward, not just for that compulsory dissertation, but hopefully, well, going forward and looking into topics that you find particularly interesting, that you feel very passionate about. And it's those topics that students feel very passionate about within education that are linked maybe to psychology, sociology, philosophy, drama, English, all those subjects I mentioned, or one or more of those, that then lead students to do very, very well as a result. So as well as those 2 compulsory papers in year 2, there's a choice of 2 further papers, and we have a list of those, and you're able to choose those papers. So that's year 2. In year 3, and year 3 is called Part 2B, there are 4 papers. There's a compulsory dissertation, that one I mentioned, of 8,000 to 10,000 words, and that, as I mentioned, allows you to pursue a research project into a very relevant area of particular interest to you. Also, 3 further papers are taken in year 3, and I've listed some of those options here. We change them sometimes year on year, but here are some examples of the papers that are on offer, from which you would choose 3 to add to that compulsory dissertation. So it gives you an idea of the types of papers we offer. And as you can see, they're very interdisciplinary and varied, and very popular with the students. And as you can see, I mean, Joe mentioned it as well, we're diverse in so many things we do, especially at Homerton, but also the offer of our papers, I feel, is so diverse in the education tripos. So from, I mentioned play in childhood and the impact of play and how it can help a child's development, to theatre, to children's literature, and how children learn through that literature, the impact of that. Also performance, drama, critical approaches to disability, as you can see here. Lots of, we also have AI now, a specialist AI paper, Education, Artificial Intelligence and Society, which is starting new this coming year. So I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour about the types of papers and how the course is structured over the 3 years. Studying education at Homerton, let's look at that. Well, the entry requirements are what you can see on this slide. I'll go to the minimum offer level, A star, AA at A level, and those equivalent points. Typical number of students per year, we have about, I would say 8 to 12-ish is about right per year. And as Joe mentioned, most, well, I would say maybe a third of those students, or maybe a quarter to a third, are from Homerton, which shows you the popularity of Homerton College for studying education. There are no actual essential subject requirements as such, but useful subjects are, and just to let you know, there are students who come to us with those very traditional core A-level science subjects, so literally physics, chemistry, biology, and come to us to do education, others from the social sciences or the arts. So there's a real diversity of students and subjects that come to study education. So those social sciences, humanities, across the board. The only thing we do stipulate is that we would like to see at least one potentially essay-based subject taken to A-level standard, as essays are something that you do write for in the education degree and are assessed from time to time. So that is a useful A-level, an essay-based A-level to have and to bring with you for this degree. Entry requirements, there's no actual admissions assessment as such required for education, but we do require, there's some written work. So there are 2 pieces of written work that are required prior to interview. And this should be in that essay format and can be potentially extracted from an EPQ. But you will be provided, please don't worry too much about that, you'll be provided with more information about those requirements at application. So hopefully that should become very clear at that point, if not before. So education at Homerton, what does it look like? I'm just mentioning a few things here. You saw that wonderful building at the start called the Donald McIntyre Building, where most, if not all of our lectures take place. Just to let you know at this point, if you do borrow papers from, for example, other departments, which is possible because we have that facility that goes on with psychology, sociology, English, where you can borrow their papers, then you might take lectures in other departments. Otherwise, it's all within that wonderful building that I showed you. But within that building, we have the most magnificent library. Joe mentioned the libraries that you have access to, both the Homerton Library, but also the Education Faculty Library. And there's a picture of it just here on the left of this slide. It is the most amazing library with the most incredibly helpful librarians. So, and they really do make you feel very welcome. I just wanted to mention the centres that we have, because you can become, what's great about the education faculty is that you can become very immersed in the centres of the research centres that go on within the education faculty. And as you can see on the top right of this slide, we specialise in different areas. So, and the research that goes on within those areas is very available to students in so many ways. Firstly, there are talks that go on literally a weekly basis from all these centres that specialise in these different areas. So children's literature, the Rudd Centre, which is to do with mostly well-being and mental health and child development. And then we have the Real Centre, based on equitable access for learning, but also the Pedal Centre, which is all to do with that play in education, development and learning. So a lot of research with many experts within the faculty who are researching, publishing work, taking that to policy and informing teaching directly. And that happens within the faculty. And you're very always welcome to attend the talks that go on, but also to potentially conduct research within these groups as part of those coursework I mentioned, but also potentially your compulsory dissertation in third year. And much of this research, I've put the Cambridge Journal of Education there because a lot of the research goes into that journal. It's also edited by a lot of our staff, so they're on the editorial board for that particular journal. So what do we look for in applicants? Joe's mentioned a little bit about this, but academic ability for education in particular, well, for me, it's actually curiosity. When I conduct interviews, I like to see people who are curious and maybe who've thought about education and what it is, what it means to them, what it looks like, or what it should look like, what maybe was missing in your own educational experiences, or what wowed you if in your education and at school that you felt was worth thinking about more. And it's that sort of thing. So it's looking for that ability and potential in a candidate, but also that, of course, you're satisfying those subject requirements, that genuine interest, that motivation, enthusiasm, curiosity, that often comes through so clearly with great candidates that we interview, but that good fit between you and the course that is on offer. And as I said, in a way, hopefully it's a no-brainer. We're so interdisciplinary, it works for so many people, but it's knowing how you fit into that course. And maybe any vocational commitments perhaps you might have where that's appropriate and how they fit in to that work. So moving on, what information do we use to assess applicants? That's a really good question, but clearly you have your academic record, so we do look at that. Your personal statements, do be honest, show that curiosity, do show that interest and that thought. I conducted another one of these talks in a central site the other day for the faculty, and a student came up to me, a prospective student, and she's been so inspired by her own educational experience and what that's meant to her, and that aligned with her interest in psychology as it happened, but it just that pairing felt so right for her, and this degree felt so right. But is it right for you? And think about that, and what might you perhaps do with it? Or maybe you don't know right now, and that's okay too. We need a school college reference. We need any written work submitted, as I mentioned previously, but then you'll be informed about that. Obviously, we will assess the performance in any written assessment that we assign, and also we'll be looking at your own contextual data, but also your performance in the interview. So as Joe said, we do like to see you and meet the people that hopefully we will be meeting in that October and getting to know you. But we do, as it says here, consider every application individually, taking all aspects into account. No part of an application is considered in isolation, and all available information is looked at together before decisions are made. And please be honest, do tell us of anything that we need to know about you that might be helpful for your application. So how to prepare? Make sure you explore the subject and your specific interests within education. Look at the website, see what we do, see who we are, and think about why it is you're applying to this degree, which I think is really very powerful. And think about any supercurricular ideas as shown here on the right. So familiarizing yourself with books and authors within education that might help to inform you for that interview process. But within in the interview, practice just articulating your ideas and thoughts aloud, maybe on your own to somebody else, but and seeing how they hear to you, how they I'm not getting my sentence, but how they sound is the word I'm trying to get to you. What do they sound like? Does that make sense? Does it sit well with you, and does that feel comfortable? I just want to go on now, and I hope that's okay. We've only got a little bit of time remaining because I'm conscious there may be questions, but I want to go on to showing you a tiny bit of a taster session. I have an extended version of this, but for today's purposes, I'm just going to show a few slides of some things that you may come across if you do the degree, come to do the degree with us, but it's also things that might spark some questions that we might ask of you at interview, but also that you might be curious about. As I said, my specialism is psychology, so I am biased where this this taster session is concerned, and I'm just going to touch on a few things within this area, and in this instance, it's creativity. So educating for that creativity. How can we get that happening in schools, in learners, from day one? Where does that creativity come from? And how does psychology help us to understand that? So just to show you a bit about the timeline of psychology, it has its roots in philosophy going back, but has slowly become, and I hope as you can kind of see here, and I appreciate some of you may not have that background in psychology, but it's something that we may ask of when you come forward with the expertise that you have, and how that knowledge contributes towards education. But in where psychology is concerned, it's become more and more over the years experimental in different ways. It's gone through different stages and ages, as you can see with this slide. How do they feed in to education? How do those different forms help us to understand how people learn? There's that age-old nurture-nature debate, and of course, we think about that and how we learn and where that comes from and what's more important to you. Is it more to do with that exposure in the environment? Or do the genes actually hold a lot of that key? And in psychology, and going down more to the present day, neuroscience has informed us so much more about how we learn and how that brain functions. And of course, as a result of those external influences as well. But I just wanted to show you this picture to show you that timeline and how we think about education in terms of how we learn. In terms of, I did mention just now that nature-nurture debate, and as you can see here, there are those names, those people. Perhaps think about when you write your application, and hopefully you've been inspired for Homerton to think about those people who have influenced us in terms of those psychologists, those philosophers, those educationalists who have helped us to think about how we do learn. Some who are more on the nature side, as on the left-hand side, so very much sort of in the genes and it's all hardwired, versus those where it's much more nurture-oriented, as you can see on the right here. So it's much more about that environment and the impact that has. And again, this is from a psychologist vantage point, but if you're a philosopher or a sociologist or a drama student, again, think about how those subjects inform education, how we can help children learn through drama maybe, or those philosophical discussions in the classroom. Here, I've got that very much, again, psychology vantage point about different ways of learning. So classical conditioning and Pavlov's dogs, or positive reinforcement, how we use stickers perhaps, or do we, or should we, in the classroom, those sorts of things. How children can be very impressionable when they see certain actions, and somebody called Albert Bandura created an experiment on the left, you can see there, with the Bobo doll, and how children took on very quite frightening behaviours because they were very impressionable and witnessed adults doing the same and felt that was okay to do so. What implications does this have on education? And just touching on, I think I won't go on too much in terms of psychology, but another slide where which shows how children develop. And those various theorists, think about how you weave in perhaps those theorists in your personal statement, how they've maybe influenced your thoughts and what you've read as a consequence of those theories, and research, of course, within those areas that's inspired you. And of course, any work, any voluntary work or work of any kind where you've actually experienced that work and seen it taking place. But these are models of different psychologists. Erikson's psychosocial stages of development, Vygotsky's that very important zone of proximal development that a clever teacher can identify and understand where a child needs to stretch and in order to get to that next stage of their learning. Then of course we don't just work in isolation, we work within systems, and Bronfenbrenner's ecological system is a great one to an example, with the various systems around us, individually, with our peers, with our schools, with the wider society, and Piaget's stages of cognitive development. And the one I would have gone on to talk about more would have been Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and how that and those needs that we have in place and in the classroom, which may look a bit like this, can help a learner to self-actualize, to become that really creative person, the person we strive for, perhaps, in all of us, based on those conditions that are in the classroom, and what teachers can put in place physiologically, safety-wise, that sense of belonging, that in order to build that esteem, but also the self-actualization that then happens if all those things are in place. So another psychological model of how various conditions can help a learner to become that self-actualized creative being. So I've whizzed through, and I just wanted to ask at this stage, and Joe, I'm not sure where we're at in terms of questions, but if there are any questions, I would be very happy to take them. So I will stop sharing.
So and we've got one asking, why should a degree in education be chosen over a degree in something more specific, e.g. maths or English? If I want to go into teaching, will doing my undergraduate in education stall my career?
That is a great question. And can you
it's a really important one, isn't it?
It's a really great question, and well done for asking it at this stage. Will it stall if you want to go into teaching? As I just start on that point, you can absolutely do a PGCE, and with us as well, we have students going on to do PGCEs in the primary course with us directly from our degree, so it's a great foundation for that. We have some students this year, in fact, who have graduated fantastically with their degrees, moving on to do that. Why should you do something that's very, if you like, less specific in some ways? Maybe I haven't expressed that well enough, because it can be specific in that sense. All those subjects I mentioned that you can be taking under the umbrella of the degree of education, you can either take a mixture. It's a very bespoke degree in that sense, or you can specialize. You can actually specialize very, very, or more specifically in, for example, education, and in psychology, and take those psychology-related papers. And so in that sense, you can specialize. But another reason I would say why at this stage, sometimes students don't quite know what it is they want to do. And even at this stage, I find, Joe, it's a case of, I've got to this stage in my life, and actually I want to keep my options open. I'm still not quite sure. And I love the idea. I also love so many subjects, and I don't want to stop one or two or three of them. I want to keep them going a bit longer. And this degree allows you to do that. It allows you to amalgamate and let each also, not just doing them in parallel, to allow psychology to inform philosophy, even, in that drama and the sociology. I think there's so many great reasons why, to do this degree in that sense. Jo, I wonder if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think if you're interested in education, I think there's also for some people up till this point, particularly if you're kind of in year 12 at school now, education and teaching are kind of very synonymous, and actually having the chance to explore what education means more broadly can be a real positive thing. So I think it really does depend on kind of the direction you want to take within education. And if that is primary teaching, the course is good preparation for that. If it's secondary, you just need to make sure you have a look at, well, how will that be? What will that allow me to do? Where will that allow me to study for my particular subject? But also, I think kind of really valuing, well, that breadth of, what education is. Education is such a fascinating subject, and it is so much so great to have the opportunity to just engage in it in all those different ways, I think.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say that I find it's a very dynamic subject, and all these wonderful, valid, interdisciplinary subjects feeding into it really do inform it. And I do come from a psychology background. So it's the last 30 years, so I'm not that new to education. But ever since I've been in education, I've been wowed by the power of it. So the power of that research that feeds into policy and practice so directly. And it's those interdisciplinary subjects that, it's not just one subject, it's a few, but as I said, you can still specialize, that really feed into it very powerfully. So I hope that's helped to answer that question.
Yeah. We've got Alicia has appeared as well.
Yes, hello.
Hi, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Sorry if I'm a bit late.
You're fine. We've been moved on to questions, and your timing is
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, hi, I'm Alicia. I'm about to start as the same, I've just finished my second year doing education. I'm at Homerton College, and yeah, I think that's the important parts.
Yeah. So we just had a question. I'd be really interested in your kind of take on it, on the value of an education degree versus perhaps taking English or maths or something like that,
Mm,
if you want to go into teaching later on.
right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I
Sorry, this
think
is like you appear and you have to start answering the question straight away.
Right.
I hope that's okay.
yeah.
Take
No,
a
I
moment to
think
think, and then you may tell us.
okay. No, I think it's definitely valuable, I guess, because of for teaching, you get that sort of well, first I think I'd start by saying that there's quite a few people on the course who want to go into teaching, and then the other half of want to go into very, very different things. So it's definitely not like teaching's the only pathway. But I think it's useful to do education over, for example, purely maths and then teaching, just because you get to have those few extra years of exploring like absolutely everything, like all the different subject areas. And I know one of my friends on the course, she was kind of saying how just because of her, I guess, love for learning, she wanted to have that extra time to then go into the deciding which subject area and then the PGC. So I think it's quite interesting. And because the department, again, is joint with postgrads and all these different types of people studying all these different types of things, I guess if you want that time to explore more and learn more, then I think definitely a good option.
Thank you.
I really love what you said, Alicia, about love for learning. And I think this is where this degree enables you to extend that love for learning.
Mm.
And especially, to make you even more curious, but also, especially if you haven't quite decided what it is that is. But thank you for that. That's really nice to know.
I've got another question, I think, for you, Helen, probably. I'm caught between choosing philosophy or education for undergrad. Is there lots of opportunity to pursue philosophical lines of inquiry in this degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, that's something Alicia can help with too. But
Absolutely.
yeah, and I don't know if you saw, but in that slide, there was a philosophy compulsory paper in first year. But also there are other papers that absolutely touch on that inquiry. So I would say the advantage is you've got philosophy plus a whole load of other things. And as I mentioned, you now have the opportunity to mix and match. And if you want to do more philosophy heavy degree in that sense, then that's possible. And also you can explore much more in the sense that your compulsory dissertation in third year can focus on those philosophical inquiries. So, I would say it's the best of both worlds. It's you've got the philosophy, but you've got other subjects that inform it, and vice versa. But also, you can go top heavy if you still really love that idea of philosophy, but it keeps your options open. So I hope I've convinced you there. But I don't know about what Alicia. Can you add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think I was just thinking because I had the same situation with psychology, so I guess different to philosophy. But again, I was caught between. I applied for psychology at all my other unis, so I guess it's yeah. If you're excited to sort of have philosophy with other things, then it's definitely a good choice. And I was just thinking of again people in my year who managed to make like their second and third year um like very focused on philosophy, like a very large percentage of it would be those modules, whilst I've done the same for psychology, so pretty much everything I'm doing now is linked to psychology in some way. So yeah, I think there's definitely, yeah, like Helen said, if you want to have the best of both worlds, then definitely a good choice.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I think I would just add that I think this links really nicely back to living in a college community as well, because there will be people studying philosophy and
Mm,
psychology and
Mm.
PBS, psychological and behavioral sciences. I can never remember what it stands for. And so actually you have the opportunities to engage with other people who are studying those things in different ways as well. And that is both students, but there's also, the Director of Studies for Philosophy is always up for a philosophical conversation. And so there's lots of ways of engaging with these things within our community as
Mhm.
well as within your course. Yeah.
Very good.
Now, we're just going to sort of talk amongst ourselves for a minute whilst we see if anyone else comes up with any questions. But
Okay, that's fine.
I think, do you mind, Alicia, if we just ask you some questions that we
yeah, no.
think would be quite useful? So I think it would be really nice just to have your kind of feeling about what being at Homerton as a student is
Okay.
like for you.
Mhm.
Would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, Homerton made a lot of sense with education being literally on site. So I think that was a big thing for me. Is like if you want to sleep in, then it's literally perfect. Like you can just get to your lectures in 5 minutes. So I think that was like a big incentive. But then I also kind of like now I was just speaking with one of my friends about how nice it is to be at one of the biggest colleges, if not the biggest, I think, student body, because you have
Mm,
so many people to like you that you maybe I don't know. I think it's harder to find people you click with in a smaller cohort. So it's nice to have so many like people, but then you also get really, really close with everyone because I think it's also one of the only colleges where you're on site, like you're living on site for all 3 years. So we're just moving kind of from building to building around campus, but everyone's in the same area. So that is so nice. I guess having that like separation from city centre, which can get a bit like overstimulating, it's nice to kind of go back to that and then yeah, be with some like really close friends. So I think yeah, the friendships have been a big part of Homerton, I'd say for me.
mm.
It's nice,
Yeah.
and it's something that you said, Joe, earlier about being away, having that distance, and
Mm,
not being in the city centre, having yeah, just that distance in those green areas that Homerton can offer, and lovely
mm.
orchard, and
Yeah.
and where you can, yeah, just escape a little bit. But obviously, town is not a million miles away. So again,
Yeah.
best of both worlds, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And something that people, again, tend to really like to hear about. We've talked a little bit about interviews from Helen and my point of view. It'd be really interesting to hear your kind of reflections on interviews
Mm.
and kind of whether they were really as terrifying as people might think they are, and what you found useful in kind of preparing for those interviews, if you don't
Mm.
mind.
Yeah, yeah. So I had two interviews, and I think it was quite nice because the style of those two interviews was quite different. I think one of them was with Helen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was, yeah, actually, that was my first one, I remember. And that was very, like I remember being very nervous, but then I kind of noticed within the first few minutes that it was genuinely just a conversation. So that made me like it was so nice because I mean Helen was so nice as well that I was like I got to be relaxed, and then it was genuinely just a chat about almost things I'm interested in, and it's kind of like we both got to navigate the conversation. And I think that's like what people said to me before applying was like just show genuine interest, just show the passion, and that was I think the education interviews really allow for that. So I think that's one thing that really I remember. And then the second one was with Joel, and I remember it was like I had to do a bit of it was like a pre-reading, but it was only like a 5 minute thing I had to read before, and that was just yeah, and like getting to I was just asked some questions about that, seeing if I understood it, and then like I remember definitely I got one part of it like completely wrong. It was about social justice, and I think I completely messed up, but it was almost like it didn't matter because it was again more about the style of the way you were trying to approach the questions. So yeah, it was just really nice to have like it was a lot more relaxed than I thought it would be. And I kind of left afterwards feeling like, oh, it was just a really nice conversation. And like we both just kind of like were bouncing off the things that were interesting. So it was nice.
Yeah.
That's
So
really
the
nice.
interviews, oh, sorry, are often you with two people in both of those interviews. And so you sometimes get kind of partway through a conversation, then the interviewers are like, right, we're changing tack now. And you have to sort of completely switch to something different, which again can feel slightly off-putting, but that's just the way they work. Did you talk
Mm.
about your written work at all in the interviews, Alicia?
Um, as in the written work that I submitted,
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't
Yeah,
think it.
because sometimes that comes up as
Oh,
well
really?
in the education interview. So I think it depends kind of on
Mm.
relevance
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
kind of what you're talking about there. But that's
Yeah.
just something to be aware of. You can be asked kind of questions about your personal statement, questions about your
Mm.
written work. So please make sure that everything you've said in your personal statement is true. You've definitely read the stuff that you say you read, and kind of remind yourselves of those
Oh.
things before the
Oh, I was
interview.
definitely asked about the personal statement. I was just wondering if you meant the actual, because I remember I think I
Oh
had to
yeah,
submit two essays as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
So I can't remember
yeah,
exactly what I touched on, but there was definitely something about my EPQ.
Mhm.
Definitely,
yeah.
yeah, just like the big things that I mentioned in my personal statement.
Yeah, yeah. But I love that it is, I mean, I love interviews because it really is just like a nice chat
Mm.
about things you care about, right?
Yeah.
Not that many opportunities in life where I get to sit and just talk all day to
Oh.
people about chemistry in my case, but about education in Helen's case. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think they are actually, I mean, it's a real opportunity to kind of engage in those conversations. In terms of preparing, what would your advice be, either of you?
Oh,
I
should I
Oh.
mean,
go?
mine would be make sure you've told the truth in everything you've written. I
Yeah,
think it makes
and
it much
Joe, that
easier to
is
talk
ab
about.
absolutely, yeah. And preparing, just as you say, be familiar with your application, know what you've written, um, and preparing. And I think it's what you said, Alicia, which was so nice. Just be kind of natural and you, and bring forward the passion that you have for the subject, because it will
Yeah.
show. It, we can just see it. And what you also said is maybe you got something a bit wrong, and again, that doesn't matter under those conditions. I know, Joe, you said it's a relaxed chat, but I can imagine candidates don't often always see that,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning.
That's what I'm
And
aiming for. I'm not saying we manage it every time.
exactly, I mean, that's a great thing. But and you come to this and obviously a bit nervous, so you may get things a bit wrong and feel wobbly, but that's okay. And sometimes that doesn't matter so much. It's you coming across, and it's hearing you and that real person, that genuine interest.
Mm.
But yeah, don't just talk about just talk about the things that you feel passionately about. I don't think I can
Mm.
say, and it'll come through. There'll be that experience, that research, maybe that that work experience that you've done. Talk about that and how that's affected you, and
Mm.
impacted on you. Mhm.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I would advise, and it's across a whole range of subjects, but I think is equally true here, although do correct me if I'm wrong, Helen, is just practicing talking with whoever will listen.
Mm.
And it may be that you know someone who is an expert in education, brilliant, talk to them. It may be that you know people who really have no idea, brilliant, talk to them. Because some of the questions they will ask you about topics that you bring to that conversation will really make you think about things in different ways. So it's often those people that don't really know very much about the areas you're looking at who can ask the best questions, I think. But dinner time conversation, cups of tea on a bench in the park, whatever works for you, to just have those opportunities to talk about things relevant to your subject. In education, is really broad. It really could be a whole range of different things.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing, just got kind of practice. Yeah, practice with exactly like a friend. I think I remember getting my brother to test me, but it's almost like I prepared the questions for myself, but then I realized it was actually harder to answer than, like, I was preparing for like a worst case scenario, and then just getting seeing where I could trip myself up by, I mentioned this in my personal statement, ask a question, then I got my brother to just ask me. So I think it is so nice to just practice, because it's a weird situation to be in. So I guess just having any sort of practice of talking, like you said.
Yeah, it's not the sort of thing you do every day, obviously, like
that
interview process. So it's that thinking about how that's going to look. But as Joe said, thinking about those more maybe unexpected questions or things, you're so entrenched sometimes you're interested in something, you don't think about other things about this topic that other people can pick up on, and often people who don't know about it sometimes as much as you do. So that's really good advice. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Now, if anyone has any other questions and wants to put them in the Q&A, that would be great. And we will have a go answering them. We'll just give people a minute or so to see if they do. Otherwise, is there anything else, Alicia, that you think you really want people to know about education as a degree?
Oh, I don't know. I was just thinking, I mean, I think you've probably covered it. It's just kind of like how it's nice that in first year you get to like dabble in everything, try out, see what's your strengths, and how you get to come in thinking maybe your head's set on like the philosophy part or the theatre part, and then you end up actually really enjoying the psychology or something like that. So yeah, I think that's one thing that I think I kind of wish I knew, that I got to try that in first year, and then second year is very flexible. So yeah.
And Alicia, I mean, where you're concerned, you said you had that interest in psychology to start with. As it happens, you've continued with it.
Yeah.
But there are, and then maybe your peers, some of your peers there, I know there are other students, well, I have been across the years, who started with a particular subject in mind and then 180 degrees, change, because they were just wowed and, well, had a preference for something else and were able to change. So, that question we had earlier about philosophy, you're interested in philosophy now. I don't know what else is on the horizon, and maybe keep that philosophy, but what else is happening around it? And maybe it's something that's so much more impactful for you that you even want to change or move on a little bit. So I think it's the power of this degree in that sense.
My equivalent story is within natural sciences, where I had applied for physics at lots of other universities and natural sciences here, and I'm very glad I came here, because I discovered that chemistry is even better than physics, and I might not have had that opportunity otherwise.
There you go.
So yeah. Okay, so we've not got any other questions that have come through. Okay. So I think, unless there's anything particularly that either of you want to say, we will let you finish a little bit early, Alicia.
I think, but for me, I hope we've inspired both for Homerton and for education, and that wonderful, powerful combination from a great college that has its roots in education and is just next door to that place where you can study it. So yeah. I don't have anything else.
You can get out of bed really late.
I love that
as your selling point.
That's a great selling point. That is so.
Yeah, and I think just to remind people that if there are any other questions that come up later on, please do contact the admissions office. So I think it's admissions at Homerton, but if you Google Homerton admissions, you'll find the email address, and you'll probably get Nicola there, who will be very willing to either help or pass any queries along. And if you haven't been able to come to Cambridge to have a visit, do look out for the open days in September, because it really is worth coming to sort of meet the students. I think in particular, that's the really important thing, to really hear about what life is like here. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. And I don't know how to stop this, actually.
Right. And thank you, Joe. And thank you, Alicia, for being here as well.
Thank you.